Hello there, grade 5. For today, we are going to learn how to do G.E.M.D.A.S. Okay, if you would notice that, or maybe you still remember that we already did this last school year. Okay, so in primary, you usually only do M.D.A.S. Okay, but in this case, I want us to include the G, at least the G, which stands for grouping. Okay, tatanggalin ko muna to. I'm gonna remove this first. Okay, G stands for grouping. What do you mean by grouping? This basically refers to the open close parentheses, the brackets, and such. Okay, I don't know how to draw the third bracket. Okay, E refers to exponent. M refers to multiplication. D refers to division. A refers to addition. And S refers to subtraction. Okay, so we are not gonna make use of exponent here. Okay, we are going to focus with grouping, multiplication, division, addition, and subtraction. Okay, let me get rid of the information that I just gave you, and we will group them accordingly. Okay, M and D is grouped as one. Multiplication and division will be grouped as one. A and S will be grouped as one as well. Please don't read that. Okay, and G will be grouped as well by itself. Also E. It's just that since we won't be using E, so let us just leave that alone. So G stands for grouping. This will be our first group. M and D will be our second group. And A and S will be our third group. Okay. Why did I group them? Why do we have this certain first, second, third? Because in G.E.M.D.A.S, we have to follow a certain rule. We need to do the groupings first, then the multiplication or division, whichever comes first. Okay, I'm going to explain that later. And of course, the last process, which is addition and subtraction. So just to ask you, I already asked you this before. If I'm going to ask you what's 1 plus 1 plus 1 times 0 is, or even if you're going to ask most of the people, if you're going to ask what 1 plus 1 plus 1 times 0, they will most likely tell you that the answer is 0. Okay, because most people will do this mistake. Again, okay, this is the wrong method. They will most likely add it one by one. 1 plus 1 will give you 2, plus 1 will give you 3. Then times 0 will give you 0. That's the wrong method there. Okay, again, we have to follow. Oops, why did I erase that? We have to follow the G.E.M.D.A.S rule. Okay? So which means we have to do the grouping first. Do you see any groupings here? Yes or no? There is none. Okay. There's no open close parenthesis in this case. Okay. Now, do you see any multiplication or division sentence here? If you notice, there is, which is 1 times 0. Since there is a multiplication and division sentence, all you have to do is to deal with that first. Deal with 1 times 0 first. What is 1 times 0? Obviously, it's 0. And all you have to do now is just to rewrite everything that is there. 1 plus 1. Teacher Mark, do I still need to write this one over here? No. You don't have to write it anymore because you already used it with this equation earlier. So what's left now is to just add that with 0. Okay? Again, we don't include this one over here because we already used it here. Okay, what's next? Do you still see any multiplication or division sentence? If you notice that there's none, what's left are addition sentences. Okay? Dalawang addition sentences. Yan lang. Okay? So all you have to do now is to deal with addition. 1 plus 1 will give you 2, plus 0 will still give you 2. Okay, so that is how you basically do G.E.M.D.A.S. Now, what if using the same example, okay, using the same example, 1 plus 1 plus 1 times 0, but in this case, we now have, let's say, an open close parenthesis here. Let's say we have an open close parenthesis here. Okay. So since now there's an open close parenthesis, hindi, palitan natin para mas, let's include this. Okay. Including the last one. Okay, 1 plus 1 plus 1 times 0. But if you notice, we now have an open close parenthesis there. This will basically make a difference, okay, to the answer. Since in G.E.M.D.A.S, we need to do the groupings first. And if you notice that there's a group here, which is ito. What's in it? You have to deal with that first. Okay, 1 plus 1 plus 1. 1 plus 1 plus 1 will give you 3. Times 0, rewriting this, times 0 will give you 0. Okay? So, ganito lang yun. Let's try to write the same equation again. 1 plus 1 plus 1 times 0. And now the open close parenthesis will be here. Okay. Now, if you notice, we then again have the open close parenthesis, okay, which is the grouping. Okay. Now, you might ask me, Teacher Mark, what to do now? Because I can see an addition and multiplication sentence. Okay, so in this case, you have to apply the M.D.A.S rule. Okay, once you are inside a parenthesis, you should still consider the M.D.A.S rule. It's like if you're going to rewrite this outside right now, just to rewrite it, it's like you have this right now, 1 plus 1 times 0. So using or applying the M.D.A.S rule, we need to do the multiplication or division sentence first. So in this case, you have to deal with 1 times 0 first. Okay? So just to erase that part here. So rewriting it, we have 1 plus, what's left? 1. What's 1 times 0? 0. Okay. Do what's inside the parenthesis first. That's 1 plus, what's 1 plus 0? I'm just still writing the open close parenthesis just to keep you guided, okay? 1 plus 0 is 1. Now, removing the open close parenthesis, that will leave us 1 plus 1, which will give you 2. Okay? So, we tend to have different answers depending on the situation that we are in an equation. Okay. Let's try to remove everything. Let's try to make another example. Okay. Kasi may mga situations kasi there are different situations that you have to deal with, especially with the division and multiplication sign. Maraming nalilito dito. Okay? So, let me just explain this part. What did I mention earlier? If you still remember, I mentioned something about multiplication and division, whichever comes first. Okay? So, if you have 4 times 2 divided by 2, all you have to do here first is identify which signs you have. Do you have a grouping? No, you don't have open close parenthesis. Do you have a multiplication or division? Yes. But if you notice that you have to observe which comes first. Okay? In this case, the multiplication sign comes first, which means you have to deal with that first. Okay? So 4 times 2 will give you 8 divided by 2 will give you 4. Writing the same number, 4, 2, and 2, but interchanging their signs, we now have 4 divided by 2 times 2. Okay, in this case, you might ask me, so Teacher Mark, do we still have to do the multiplication first? No, obviously not. Because in this case, all you have to do nga, like what I've said earlier, for this group, you have to do whichever comes first in the equation. Okay, for multiplication or division, whichever comes first. So like for example, this one, which comes first, the division sign or the multiplication sign? So it's quite obvious that it is the division sign, which means you have to deal with this first. Okay, it doesn't matter. We don't literally need to follow the order of M and D. Okay, that's why we group them, because whichever comes first in the equation, that's what you have to do first. So since division came first, then all you have to do is to deal with division first. 4 divided by 2 will give you 2, multiplied to 2 will give you 4. Okay? I hope I am not I am able to explain to you properly and not confusing you all the way. Okay? Let's try another example. 6 divided by 3 times, let's say, 4. Okay? So in this case, you have to deal with multiplication and division again. Okay. M and D, ang group natin, ang second group natin. If you notice, we don't have any grouping here. So, all you have to deal with first is whichever comes first. Since multiplication and division, then again, multiplication and division fall under the same group. Okay. So in this case, it doesn't mean that we should always start with M. No. You should not always start with M, but you can start, as long as it's within the group, you should start to whichever comes first. Okay? So which in this case, division comes first. So you have to deal with that first. So doing so, 6 divided by 3 will give you 2, multiplied to 4 will give you 8. Now, a parenthesis can change the situation. Okay? A parenthesis can change the situation. Just like, for example, let's say 6 divided by 3 times 2. Kunwari, ganyan. Okay. Let's not have a parenthesis first. So, doing the G.E.M.D.A.S process, checking if there's an open close parenthesis, there is none. Checking if there's multiplication or division, yes, both are present. So, since they belong in one group lang, since they are still in one group, all you have to do now is to do which came first. So, in this case, it's the division sign. So, you have to deal with 6 divided by 3, which gives you 2 multiplied to 2 will give you 4. Okay? I hope I'm not making a mistake in my computation. That would be embarrassing. Okay. Now, let me try to rewrite that equation again. 6 divided by 3 times 2. 6 divided by 3 times 2. But this time, I'm going to put an open close parenthesis. So, notice earlier, 6 divided by 3 times 2. We did this first, which gave us 2. Multiplied to 2, which came from here. 2 times 2 is equivalent to 4. Okay, so in this case, we now have the same exact thing. It's just that we added an open close parenthesis. This will basically change the answer. Okay, so if you notice, asking yourself, do we have an open close parenthesis? Yes, we have an open close parenthesis here, which means we have a group. Okay, since we now have a group, you have to deal with that first. What is 3 times 2? It's equivalent to 6. All you have to do is just to rewrite this. Please rewrite them in order. Okay? Please rewrite them as to where they are, how they are positioned in the mathematical expression. Okay? You cannot just write these numbers randomly in an equation. You have to properly place them accordingly. Okay? So that's 6 divided by 6. 6 divided by 6 will basically give you 1. So if you notice, our answers are different. Earlier, without the parenthesis, we ended up with 4. And now, you ended up with 1. Okay. So that's basically how you do the G.E.M.D.A.S. So let's try another example. I'll just write this here para guide lang natin. Again, this is our first, second, and third group. Wala tayong exponent ngayon. Okay, we'll not include that. Okay, so for example, we have 4 plus 7 times 2 minus 6. Okay, so try natin to. Do you see any grouping here? Do you see any groupings here? No. Do you see any multiplication and division? Yes. It's connected to 7 and 2. So you should include 7 and 2 there. So that's 7 times 2. 7 times 2 will give you 14. Again, like what I've said earlier, you have to rewrite them according to how they were written in the mathematical expression. So if 4 plus is here, you have to write 4 plus here. If minus 6 is here, you have to write minus 6 there. So all you have to do now is to ask yourself again, do you still see any multiplication or division sentence? Do you still see any groupings? There's none. All what's left now is addition and subtraction. Okay, so for you to avoid confusion, not just to avoid confusion, you just need to do it one by one. Okay, unless you are capable of mentally adding and subtracting this, especially if you have a bunch of like a bunch of numbers already. So in this case, all you have to do is just to check it one by one. We have 4 plus 14, which will give us 18, minus 6. Of course, you're rewriting that. That's very important. 18 minus 6 will give you 12. Okay, so that's basically how you deal with G.E.M.D.A.S. Okay, so try natin different method. So for example, let's try to rewrite this equation again. 4 plus 7 times 2 times 2 minus 6 ba yun? Okay, minus 6. But this time, we are going to put an open close parenthesis. Okay? So I'm giving similar examples. This is how I usually train you, diba? Before, I usually just give you similar ano pa to? Equations, and then we just tend to change things para to see the difference. Okay. So in this case, we now have 4 plus 7 open close parenthesis times 2 minus 6. It's quite similar earlier, except that in this case, we now have an open close parenthesis. Now, ask yourself, do you see an open close parenthesis? Obviously, I just said it earlier. Yes. Which means you have to deal with that first. What is 4 plus 7? Look, 4 plus 7 will give you 11. I hope you're able to get that, right? Then all you have to do is just to rewrite them accordingly times 2 minus 6. Okay, claro? So, asking the question to yourself again, do you see any multiplication or division sentence? Or let's say, do you see any groupings here? There's none. Do you see any multiplication process here or division? Yes, there's 1, 11 times 2. 11 times 2 is equivalent to ding 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 22 minus 6. Rewriting this. Syempre, it's very important nga to rewrite. Okay. 22 minus 6 is equivalent to what? Equivalent to 16. Okay. So, showing these examples, if you notice, magkaiba nga. Okay, so this is how you do the multiplication process or the G.E.M.D.A.S process of solving an equation. Okay? You might ask me, Teacher Mark, paano to? Do we only do this during G.E.M.D.A.S? No. This is applicable to all mathematical expression. Okay? Everything. Kahit nasaan kayo, if you are in a certain game show, the same rule will apply. If you are in a certain planet, the same rule will apply. If you are in a certain place, if you are in a different country, the same rule applies. Okay? G.E.M.D.A.S, you should follow the proper way of computing an equation according to their signs. Grouping, then exponents, then multiplication or division as one group, whichever comes first, okay, to avoid the confusion. And then, addition and subtraction na. Okay. So, try this daw. Diyan lang. Kung kaya nyo mentally, kayo na bahala. Basta ako, I'll just give you an example. Let's say 12 minus 3 times 2. Ano pa ba? Minus 6. Okay. Try to do this on your own. I'll give you the time. Pero short lang ha. Or better yet, just pause the video. For us not to extend our time, we are almost 20 minutes down the clock. Hi. Hello. Okay, so I hope you pause the video to take the time to answer this, and let's try to check if you'll be able to get the same answer as this one. Okay, so asking yourself, do you see any groupings here? Do you see any open or close parentheses? There is none. Do you see any multiplication or division sentence? Yes, we see multiplication here. That's 3 times 2. What is 3 times 2? We have 6. Okay, all you have to do now is to rewrite the equation. That's 12 minus 6 minus 6. Okay, so do it one by one to avoid confusion. What is 12 minus 6? 12 minus 6 will obviously give you 6. Then rewrite this minus 6 again. And the answer is 0. Okay? So, ganun lang yun. Ganun lang kadali. Okay? So, I hope you're not having a hard time with this. One more example. We have using this the same lang. 12 minus 3. Okay. But this time, let's say I'll write divide na lang. Okay, divide by 3 minus 6. Kasi baka sabihin nyo, parating na lang multiplication. Okay. So in this case, we have 12 minus 3 open close parenthesis divided by 3 minus 6. Okay. So 12 minus 3. 12 minus 3 will give us, if you notice pala, sorry, I'll give you the time pala to solve this. Okay. So please click the pause button and try to solve this on your own. Okay. Paki-pause na lang so that para hindi mahahaba yung oras natin. Okay, so let's try to answer this now. I hope you will have the same answer. So if you notice, you should basically, yes, as a beginner, to avoid confusion, you should actually ask yourself the rules, no? Yung, do you see any parentheses here? Parang ganyan, okay? So in this case, do you see any parentheses here? Yes, it's under 12 minus 3. So 12 minus 3 will give you 9, which means you really have to do that first. 9 divided by 3 minus 6. Oops, we ended up with a negative. Okay, my bad. But as long as you're doing the correct process na, so magkakaroon tayo ng negative dito. So let's just avoid this process na lang. Because 9 divided by 3 will give you 3 minus 6. So nagkakaroon tayo ng negative. The answer is negative 3. So sorry for that. Ang importante naman is that you're able to get the process here. Let me just give you one more na lang talaga. Sorry about that. Okay, so let's try to do this. We now have a combination, no? If you notice, so we have 15 minus 3 times 4 minus 6 divided by 2. Okay, let's try to do this. First, ask yourself, or pause muna natin pala. Try to answer this on your own. Okay, I hope you pause the video and try this kasi that's the only way for you to learn. So let's try to answer this now. Do you see any open close parentheses? Obviously, there's none. Do you see any multiplication or division sentence? Yes, you have 3 times 4, you have 6 divided by 2. Now, anong gagawin mo una? Are you going to do the multiplication first or the division? Ano ba ang nauna? Which came first? It's 3 times 4. Nauna ang 3 times 4 or nauna ang multiplication before the division. So which means you have to do 3 times 4 first. Okay? Rewriting everything, that's 15 minus what's 3 times 4 is equivalent to 12 minus 6 divided by 2. Okay. Do you see any multiplication process here or division sentence? Yes, there is, which is 6 divided by 2. So all you have to do now is to rewrite 15 minus 12 minus 6 divided by 2. What is 6 divided by 2? The answer is 3. Okay, let's try to answer this. What's 15 minus 12 minus 3? Let's do it one by one. What's 15 minus 12? It is basically 3. 3 minus 3 will give you 0. So that's it. That's how you do the process. If you have any questions or if you're confused, please do not hesitate. Do not be shy to ask me a question. Okay? That's it. That's how you do the G.E.M.D.A.S.